Hey, folks, welcome in to another episode of A Nichols Worth. I'm your host, Keaton Nichols. Make sure you check me out at Keaton D. Nichols on Instagram, Twitter, and the Facebook as well. Appreciate people for joining me on this Friday evening. Hope everyone had a great Friday. Hope everyone had a great week as well. And that you have some awesome weekend plans and all that other good stuff. Get right into your weekend after we talk about what happened in news today. And there's really only one story to talk about. But before we get there, make sure you follow the show as well and that you are tracking all of our content coming out over the next couple of weeks and months at A Nichols Worth. At A Nichols Worth. You can find our work on Spotify, Anchor, and Facebook. And by our work, I mean my work. Anyway, you guys know how the show works. If you're listening, watching live, any of that other good stuff, give us a share on your timelines. And don't be afraid to hop into the conversation. I encourage conversation very much so here on this platform. And I definitely want to know what people have to say about today's news coming from the Olympics. Today's headlines, by the way, sponsored by Parkour Therapy. Make sure you check out parkourtherapy.com today. Use the promo code ANW 2021 for 10% off all merchandise on the site. Get yourself a free trial, of course, to Parkour Plus workouts where you can get yourself toned and in shape right now. So make sure you follow along. The big news, of course, today, the Olympic size news coming from the AP, and that is that Sha'Carri Richardson will miss the Olympic 100 after a positive marijuana test. Doesn't say positive in that headline, but I promise you it was positive. That's why it is news. So more on this one from the AP. American champion Sha'Carri Richardson cannot run in the Olympic 100-meter race, after testing positive for a chemical found in marijuana. That chemical is THC, for those wondering. Richardson, who won the 100 at Olympic trials in just 10.8 seconds on June 19th, spoke of her ban on Friday on the Today Show. I did get a chance to see that interview. And you know, it was what it was. You know, she said, look, I'm, in so many words, I'm human. It's disappointing, but I'm human. I used marijuana to deal with, some personal issues of mine. And that was that. She tested positive at the Olympic trials, so her result is erased. Fourth place finisher Jenna Prandini is expected to get Richardson's spot in the 100. Richardson says, she said this is what she did. Richardson accepted a 30-day suspension that ends July 27th. That's actually interesting, and I'll get to that, which would be in time for the women's relays. Of course, USA Track and Field has not disclosed their plans for the relay yet. So in other words, they haven't really made a decision on whether Sha'Carri will still be a part of that, even though she still qualifies. Her suspension is actually only 30 days, and I'll say only 30 days for a reason here. We'll come back around to that. But this news hit everybody pretty hard because Sha'Carri was definitely somebody who was beginning to sort of take the Olympics by storm. She was becoming that individual, that people tuned in, or that people were going to tune in to see. There's usually a few characters like this in the Olympics. Not saying that she was a character, like acting like a character, but there's a few people who are just electric, that kind of capture the moment that comes before them by storm. And Sha'Carri is one of those people who certainly did that. Her Olympic trial run of 10.86 seconds, was tremendously impressive. Not only did she set a record, but it also happened just days after finding out that she had lost her biological mother, of which allegedly started this whole incident. That's why she smoked, or why she ingested marijuana in some way, shape, or form. We don't know how she did, but that's what she says. And this is just most unfortunate news. I mean, after hearing this today, something that I saw that I felt was really positive, actually, was the outpouring of support from people who were definitely on the train of saying, look, you should just let her run anyway, right? Like, who cares? It's a little weed. We've all smoked a little weed here and there. Who cares, right? Like, there was that kind of support. And then there was also, the support that I really, really certainly appreciated too, which is, hey, we should keep supporting Sha'Carri. This should not be a reason for you to, sort of toss her aside. And I agree with that 100%. She made a mistake. I mean, that's honestly what I think, is that she made a mistake. She said as much during the interview, the Today Show interview. I'm not going to play the whole thing here, but I'm not going to play it rather on this live outlet, but we'll play it for you on the replay. It's, she says during the course of the interview, that she knew the rule. Like, this was not an accident or anything else like that. Like, she ate a weed cookie or something else like that, and then it so happened, boom, this kind of pops up. She was aware of what she was doing, and she decided to do it anyway, which was a mistake. And that's the human part that can't really be ignored in this situation. People make mistakes. They do. And she's copped, to everything, of course, that she's been accused of, because it's kind of hard not to. But that's what happened. She made a mistake. And it is possible, I think, before we kind of dive into this, I think it is possible to support Sha'Carri. It's possible to support her and want the best for her. And also at the same time, justify the suspension that was handed out today by the IOC. Now, I know, according to some very light polling data that I did on this on my social media a little bit earlier, that I'm certainly in the minority in this opinion, but I do think that the IOC suspension was the right thing to do. Was it a difficult call? Was it something that certainly not a lot of people wanted to see? Certainly. But it was the correct call. I often, I've been thinking about this all day, and is there a way that this suspension is in some way, shape, or form out of pocket, right? Like, is this in some way, shape, or form something so unusual in this particular case that it should be fought and it should be challenged, so to speak, to allow her to still be able to run? And the more that I think about it, the more that I consider this, I can't justify that. I don't know if I can justify that. I am certainly an advocate. I am pro weed. I am pro marijuana. I don't think that it damages one's character if somebody makes the decision, that, hey, I'm either going through stuff in life. Maybe I'm not going through stuff in life. Maybe I'm just hanging around and I want to, have a good time. And they decide to engage recreationally, legally in their state or wherever, which is also what happened here too with Sha'Carri. She was in Oregon, which is a legal state. Recreationally legal state. If those are the rules you're following, you're abiding by those rules, I don't think that anything should happen to you. You're perfectly within your rights to do that. I don't think that's I don't think that makes you rather a bad person. But it's hard. It's hard for me to look at this situation and say rules are rules when we consider who exactly the subject of this topic really is. A black woman, a young black woman too. And oftentimes when young black women are in this position, black women period, are in this position, all types of other stuff gets thrown into the conversation that sort of muddies people's perception as to how they should judge them in this situation. I see it happen all the time. And so in this particular situation, if you want to say, hey, rules are rules, she knew the rules. That's the correct thing. I mean, she did know the rules. She did violate the rules, of course. But now that almost serves to sort of damage the reputation of this young lady, as if she's a bad person. I don't think she's a bad person, and I want to split that right here. I don't think that she's a bad person. I can't support the decision to ingest marijuana in some way, shape, or form just days or weeks before your Olympic trial. I understand the stress. And I understand the situation that she was in with her mother just passing, and having that be her coping mechanism. Again, no problem with that. But the decision to do so before this once in a lifetime opportunity, she's going to have other opportunities to run. But this, as a 21-year-old, this once in a lifetime opportunity, once every 4-year opportunity at the very least, I can't justify that decision to do that anyway. Knowing the rules and breaking those rules anyway, I can't defend her against the suspension that was laid down. If I'm a member of the IOC and I get back this positive test from Sha'Carri Richardson, what am I supposed to do as a member of the IOC or as a member of the body that's basically tasked with keeping this whole thing fair? 99% of the other participants, everybody else that's headed to the Olympics so far at this point that we know, did not test positively for marijuana. But this one did. Sha'Carri did. And so the position that I'm in, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to let her slide on this? You know, am I supposed to bend the rules just for this one person? As much as I may want to, and as much as I may say, look, this marijuana thing is stupid, it's dumb, and it is. Like who cares? People have noted from left to right. You know, who cares if somebody's smoking weed? They probably shouldn't want to smoke weed. It might slow them down. You know, like, who cares? And it is a dumb rule, but it's a rule. And I think the important thing to kind of pull out of this is to ensure that we're not lumping this into the other conversations the real conversations that we have about race and the rules sort of bending, you know, against someone of a particular race. The way that the rules are, that the standard, if you will, is in some way, shape, or form bent against people of color. This is not that. This sometimes happens where these things kind of come out, and it's hard to, you know, kind of be on the side of people of color in this situation and say, look, I'm with you. I understand that sometimes we get railroaded in these situations, just not this one. Sha'Carri Richardson made a mistake. Like many other people, she made a mistake. She's now being punished for that mistake, but it's still a mistake nonetheless. Therefore, we shouldn't judge her. And we shouldn't compare her to other people like Michael Phelps. I kept seeing this comparison all day, and I'm like, what the heck are people talking about? And this is where the messages kind of get muddy, because people are putting up Sha'Carri's picture right next to Michael Phelps. And they're saying, this is a pure example of good old, you know, world racism here. And it's not. The more that you sort of attach real racial situations to non-analogous, if you will, situations, the more you try and tie them to things that don't have anything to do with the situation, the more you muddy the waters. And no, you know, Michael Phelps does not deserve to be dragged through this same sort of muds, you know, as if he got away with something that Sha'Carri did not. A few things about Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps, after dominating the 2008 Olympics, I think he had like 8 medals. It was something crazy. Anyway, he received a 3-month suspension here. And people might remember that it had something to do with weed. It did. Phelps' 3-month suspension came in 2009 after a photo surfaced of him hitting a bong at a party that happened in late 2008. The photo surfaced about 6 months before his next competition. The photo surfaced. So to keep this in mind, Michael Phelps didn't test positive for marijuana like Sha'Carri did. Didn't test positive. Just simply a photo surfaced of Michael Phelps smoking weed at his party, and the International Swimming Alliance, whatever they're called, suspended him for 3 months after that. So Sha'Carri got a 1-month suspension, which could have been a lot worse. Although she, you know, basically cooperated with authorities, for lack of a better term. She took she's doing a program now with them, and that shortened the sentence from what could have been a 3-month suspension into a 1-month suspension, which still allows her, if USA Track and Field allows her, to run later this year. But Michael Phelps is not the guy that you want. Michael Phelps served his suspension. He did. And it was a 3-month suspension. Didn't even test positive. All right. So again, it does It actually does Sha'Carri a disservice when you try and attach her to a story that does not match. There is damage in that. And I saw that time and time and time and time again today. And it was like, I don't want to be a jerk sometimes, but sometimes it's just like simple Google, right? Google something before you post it. I hate to be that guy because it makes me sound snarky. It makes me sound like a news snob, but this is real simple. So it took me about 14 seconds to verify that what I was seeing about Michael Phelps wasn't really true, and people didn't take that time out today. They thought back and they said, Michael Phelps, oh yeah, he was a swimmer, Olympics, also very fast, weed, okay. Michael Phelps, nothing happened to Michael Phelps. And people rode with it. It's the power of social media and information. It was interesting to see that develop and grow today, that comparison to Michael Phelps. Totally off. But anyway, these are things that I think we have to keep in mind for this. Marijuana as a coping mechanism is good. I do think that there is a separate conversation here to be had. Actually, that is happening now, I would say. That conversation is why exactly are we punishing people? Why are we still testing people for marijuana in any instance? This doesn't make any sense. And that is a great point. I think that is a brilliant point. And Jovan Alfred, of course, commenting in, watching on the YouTube, right on it, of course, saying throughout all this, I still think she runs the 4x100 relay. I think USA Track and Field is definitely going to allow her to do that for sure, Jovan. He goes on to say, maybe there's a bigger discussion surrounding marijuana in sports, exactly what I'm opening up right now. There is a conversation around marijuana in sports that we got to have. And there have been a number of ways, I think, to approach this situation and to take this situation that other athletes have kind of set a precedence for, basically, in other leagues. I don't want to say, because it also kind of sounds colonialist almost, to say that there's a particular way that you fight these battles. But what I can agree with in that mentality is that, intentionally violating the rules, right? She knew. Intentionally violating the rules and then coming back and saying this rule is really dumb and it shouldn't exist in the first place is not the way to do it. It is not the way to go about it. There's been other examples of this in my favorite sport, football, in the NFL. There's a few examples of this that came to mind today because it was like so strikingly similar. Michael Phelps wasn't the one that came to mind. It was really a couple of guys that came to mind. Ricky Williams is one. Ricky Williams was a beast coming out of college. His first couple of years in the NFL. Played football at University of Texas. Then he was at New Orleans and then Miami and became this rushing sensation. But was suspended from the league for smoking weed. There's a documentary about him in ESPN 30 for 30 that's really good. It goes deeper than that into the reasons why he made those decisions and whatnot. But that's what this reminded me of at first. It was like Ricky Williams also kind of knew the rules here. He knew that if he tested positive that he was going to be suspended from the NFL. And that's exactly what happened. And Ricky Williams went on to, do interview, not countless, but he went on to do some interviews after that where journalists, in effect kind of asked him like, hey man, like what's like, why can't you just not smoke weed? And his response is like, this is kind of what I do. This is how I deal with the stresses of everything. And football is a tough sport, in case you don't know. So eventually Ricky Williams made the decision that, you know what, I'd rather have my lifestyle than play football. So he walked away. Another person, Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon just today released a statement from his agent that said that he's trying to get reinstated into the NFL. Well, Josh Gordon, as talented and as awesome as you wanted Josh Gordon, wide receiver in the NFL, to be, Josh Gordon, in addition to some other things, couldn't stay off the weed, like Stephen A. Smith would say. Everybody wants Josh Gordon to be successful. I'm a Steelers fan. He was drafted by the Browns. I'm a Steelers fan. I've always wanted to see Josh Gordon do well. I think he's immensely talented. But he intentionally, time and time and time again, broke the NFL's substance abuse or substance policy, illegal or banned substance policy, of which marijuana is on that list. And people rushed to his defense in the same sort of way and said, let Josh Gordon play. He's a talented receiver. All he did was smoke weed. Who cares? Again, a valid point. A valid point that others have actually accentuated before. Take Eugene Monroe, right? I'm pulling out all the names tonight. Eugene Monroe used to play with the Baltimore Ravens and I think maybe the Jaguars or something like that beforehand. Anyway, he's an offensive lineman. He decided to retire at the age of 29 and become an advocate for players who wanted to have an alternative to taking dangerous opioids, addictive opioids and things like that to deal with the day-to-day pain that was associated with playing football. Eugene Monroe stepped away from the game at age 29. Key phrase there. He stepped away from the game at age 29. He retired and became an advocate. So no, he's no longer playing football, but he's doing something to help change the rules on this, especially considering the alternatives. You know, we love Josh Gordon. We loved Ricky Williams. We still love him. He's still alive, but, you know, we loved Ricky Williams as a football player. We want to see Josh Gordon. But at some point, we have to acknowledge that if you, as a person, are more willing to make that choice rather than follow the rules of this particular league that we may or may not find unfair, then eventually you have to wrestle with your decisions. I have to say of Josh Gordon, as much as I want him to play, he's making decisions. He's making a mistake. It's his mistake to make, but it is a mistake. And I look at this situation in the same sort of way. Yeah, I think the rule is dumb. Yeah, I think the rule is stupid, but it's a mistake to go against the grain and expect that you would be given leniency afterward. I can't walk into a job if I smoke weed every day. I can't walk into a job interview, do the job interview, and they say, okay, the job is yours so long as you pass a drug test. Even if I think that's dumb, which I do, even if I think that's dumb, the rules are the rules. If I don't like it, I can go somewhere else. I can go do something else. No one's forcing her to be a part of the Olympics here. She made a choice. And I think we got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. There's nothing about that choice that disqualifies her as a person that I think that we should be cheering for and that a person who we should be supporting. Most def. But it is a mistake nonetheless. Let me know what you think. If you're listening in the comments section, Sha'Carri Richardson, should she have been suspended for this section of the Olympics, this 100? I say, while it's not cool, I don't like it. I think the IOC did the only thing that the IOC could do in that situation. The only thing that they did do. There are other things, real quick, before we get out of here. I did want to talk about this, too. Swim caps. And let me know what you think in the comment section. Swim caps at the Olympics also for natural hair are being ruled out of the Olympic Games. This headline coming from The Guardian. I kind of leapt back at first whenever I saw this news, like, what? What are we talking about here? The news is actually not as damning as the headline, though. This coming out of The Guardian. Swimming caps made by Soul Cap is the name of the brand. Excuse me. Which previously partnered with Alice Deering, who last week qualified to become the first black female swimmer to represent Team GB. I guess it's Great Britain. I don't know. At the Olympics, those caps have been rejected by the International Swimming Federation, which for some reason is shortened to FINA. I don't really understand that one. But anyway, so it's not every single cap. When I first read this headline, I thought that any sort of swimming cap made for natural hair was banned by the IOC or I guess this organization FINA, the International Swimming Federation. I thought it was every single black cap rather. It's not every black cap. It's just this one brand, right? Soul Cap. Soul Cap is a black-owned business, which is why this is sort of generating buzz. And people are saying, look, they don't want, black-owned businesses to be supported by the International Swimming Federation. Outlawing this particular swim cap is, kind of keeping the black business down. And there's something there, though. There's some here in there with the swimming cap situation, right? The article says, this is interesting information. I didn't know this about swim caps, but the original swim cap designed by Speedo 50 was created to prevent Caucasian hair from flowing into the face when swimming. Obey, who is quoted in this as one of the founding members of the Black Swimming Association, Obey says that the caps did not work for African-American hair, which she says grows up and defies gravity. Most certainly. The real thing about this story that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way, I guess, was the part of the International Swimming Federation who said that the caps are outlawed, these soul caps, right? They're outlawed in swimming competition because they did not fit the, quote, natural form of the head. And to their, quote, best knowledge, the athletes competing at the international events never used, neither require caps of such size and configuration. There are more ways to say that I've never interacted with black people before, at least enough black people to reasonably have a response to this situation. And the entire International Swimming Federation body, however many members there are, just basically confirmed that by releasing this statement. You don't say that. To the best of our knowledge, we've never had, yes, this Alice Deering, who I didn't know this either. She's the first black female swimmer to represent Team Great Britain in the Olympics. First one. Okay, so if there's something that's this blatantly obvious as a first, then to also say that because she's the first person like her, if you will, that has participated in this, we don't have any rules for her kind, for her type. It's what I felt from this. It felt icky, like, ugh. Gross. Absolutely gross. This is something that needs to be challenged, obviously. But is it going to happen in this Olympics? Maybe. Who knows? It might not be until 2024, I guess, Olympics it would be, until we get some real resolve on this kind of thing. Issues like this are the things that we need to be moving the needle on, pushing back a little bit on. Like, this is jacked up. What this is saying is not a simple rejection of, a cap, if you will. This is a rejection of a type of people. Look, we've had certain types of people swimming in this event for the last however many years, right? Now these people over here show up, right? And they're different textured hair, and they suddenly want to change the rules about how big a cap can be. No. We are sticking to our rules no matter what. Sorry if your hair does something different than what the people, traditionally that have fulfilled this role have done. That's a rule that specifically targets black people. The marijuana thing affects everybody, right? But this right here, this cap situation right here, this is targeted specifically towards one group of people, one race of people. Yeah, it's jacked up. Yeah, we should be pushing back against that. Amazing statistics coming out of Swim England. This is across the pond, which apparently we can't swim in because it found that 95% of black adults and 80% of black children in England do not swim. And we know some of the other statistics about death and race, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, that a lot more black kids die from swimming incidents than do white kids. And it's one of those examples of something where if you look at the end cap statistic, like you look at the black kids die more from incidents involving the pool than white kids. If you just take that statistic, you're going to be like, well, I guess black kids just suck at swimming. And that's where a lot of people stop digging. Like they don't go deep to understand things like this. And you say, well, how is this connected to the idea that black kids typically don't swim, or black adults, for that matter, according to the survey, don't really swim either? You're talking about an industry, not an industry, but you're talking about a sport, a thing, if you will, where at every single turn, as people of color begin to sort of adjust to what's going on, there are more adjustments to kind of keep people of color outside of those realms. I mean, it happens in more than just sport. I think it happens in society a lot, where it's not just, the pool, but it's maybe the job pool. Maybe it's, creating a particular environment at work that we deal with this kind of stuff. And maybe it's not a swim cap, but maybe it's some other sort of subtle rule that seems to target one group more than the other. And in your head, especially if you're a part of those targeted groups, you're saying to yourself, this ain't right. I cannot justifiably compete in this environment. How many of us have found ourselves working in an environment like that, where we say to ourselves, the degree of difficulty on this is much higher. I have less resources or am expected to do more than people who don't look like me at this very same place. Not to mention pay is typically lower as well. We can't take the NCAP statistic, no pun intended here. We can't take the NCAP statistic and just try and analyze the problem from there. You got to go back and you got to look at stuff like this, that the International Committee on Swimming is not even open-minded, I don't even know if that's the word here, enough to be able to consider the effect that black hair would have on a sport like this. Maybe that has something to do with those damning statistics that I just read out of Swim England. I don't know if they're that bad in the United States, but I'm sure they're right around there. Right around there. Conversations like this, and I talked about this a couple of days ago about, I want to say Barry is her last name. After her trials, she decided not to, she didn't want to hear the national anthem because it's not really her as a black woman. She was like, look, I don't want to do this. That became a kind of a thing. I think at this Olympics, this is going to be the stage, if you will, where something's going to go down. IOC officials have already said, look, we don't want any Black Lives Matter demonstrations. We don't want any kneeling. We don't want any sort of disruptions or disturbances to these games. Well, I can tell you something's going down. Something's going down at this year's Olympics. I don't know what it is, but something is going down. This is not a moment when you want to be silenced. This is not a time necessarily when thoughts are just going to be kind of kept inside the cranium. That's what Lana just commented in on the Instagram page and said that no Afro swim caps and no BLM apparel at all. So no demonstrations, no apparel, anything else like that. You are asking, I think, in an event, and it's not just about George Floyd, right? But George Floyd last year sort of brought the world together in a conversation, because remember, it wasn't just the United States that was sitting at home because of coronavirus. Should have been sitting at home because of coronavirus, but it was the entire world. And so you had George Floyd demonstrations in other parts of the world, not because this story was so crazy that we had never heard it before. It was just the impact was that deep. People in other countries were saying, look, man, I know situations like this have happened. And those Americans are speaking out on this. Maybe it's our time to speak out on something like this. Maybe we should show a demonstration. It got the world all jazzed up. And I do think, as I've mentioned in previous shows, that we are better off for that kind of thing. But we are not at a point where I think those voices are willing to be silenced on what might possibly be the largest stage, worldwide stage anywhere, and I guess in the world. The largest stage in the world is the Olympics. Every single country has a vested interest in tuning in to see what happens. Everywhere in the world. So do I think that the athletes that are going to show up there are going to stay within those confines of what the IOC has laid out? These seemingly limited and narrow rules that don't seem to allow for the full expression of these athletes. Do I think that the athletes are going to stay within the bounds of that? Heck no. Something's going down at the Olympics this year. I just don't know what, but I will be watching. I'm not normally a big Olympics person, but I am interested to see how much people are willing to push norms, because Olympics are definitely all about norms, holding on to those norms as we saw today. So anyway, that is the Friday show. I appreciate people for commenting in. Jess commented in a few times on the YouTube. I appreciate that. And she said the constant barriers are global. They are. They really are. This is going to be something that I think is going to have an effect on the way that we do business at the Olympics and some other places, possibly for, a very long time. And so I'm actually looking forward to that. I don't want conflict, but I am looking forward to, what's going to change about all this. So that should be pretty exciting as well. Appreciate the folks for joining in on the conversation tonight. Remember, of course, you can check out parkourtherapy.com. You can get yourself 10% off everything site-wide using the promo code ANW 2020. Also check out Parkour Plus workouts you can do from your phone. We'll be back on Monday, of course, with a brand new show, hopefully with a little bit more positive news from the weekend. I hope everyone has a great weekend, a holiday weekend. Make sure and stay responsible and all that good stuff. And I will see everyone on the flip side of the weekend. Peace.